Davis, how are you?
Doing awesome, Ryan. How are you?
Very good. So you were 21 and you not only went traveling in India, but you moved to India. And not only did you move, but you went to a rural area.
Yes. It was it was a whirlwind experience to start off. I actually had aspirations to do philanthropy work or work for a nonprofit or do something entrepreneurial in many developing countries. India was not one of them.
Okay.
So it actually caught me by surprise a bit.
It's unusual that a young person wants to do philanthropy work. Why do you want to do that?
That's a good question. I think it was a lot of different things. So when I was in university, I felt a lot of different pressures socially, from society, from my university, and it was like always building the resume.
Okay.
Right? It was you need an internship. A lot of my friends were getting good consulting jobs, and I think that I actually started to obsess, but also reject that a lot. So,
was you tackling philanthropy supposed to be like a pro resume move, or because that could be a way to differentiate
it
yourself.
wasn't at all. Honestly, I remember when I was younger, I would sit and I would refresh LinkedIn every day.
Okay.
And I would refresh LinkedIn. And I remember doing this 3 years straight. I'd go on LinkedIn.
And younger? How old's that?
I don't know, maybe 20, 21.
Okay.
And I was just waiting for something to happen, right? And I wasn't even, I was looking for a job, I guess, but I was just wondering what do people even do?
Yeah.
And how do I get there? And I would just refresh the page, and I realized that wasn't getting me anywhere.
So there wasn't a specific job you were looking for when you refreshed the page?
No, not at all.
Okay, so you're quite purposeless
about
what you're
Success was the job.
Okay, and that just means a career that other people are, in quotes, enviable of.
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of things in my head that meant success for other people, but I hadn't defined it for myself yet.
Mm-hmm. Which is normal.
Yeah.
You're only 21.
Yeah.
So I think the experience you had in India, I've never met I've met people who've had these sort of, really unique experiences, but to have had it at such an early age is rare.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned social pressures. Were there other social pressures that made you sort of go to India? Because I kind of also view it as a way to reject the US and where you were. Maybe when I say other social pressures, friends, family, or is it purely work related?
Yeah, so I think I was in search of something. I didn't really know what it was at the time, but I actually applied for this program it was an entrepreneurial program operating in 13 developing countries around the world. So I initially wanted to go to Uganda or Cambodia.
Mm-hmm.
In the program I applied to, the application was show yourself in any way that you want. And if we like what we see, we're going to place you in a developing country that we think that you will fit into.
Okay.
And I ended up writing, have you heard of The Last Lecture or heard of Randy Pausch?
No, tell us.
So it's like a small coffee table book. It's an awesome read, actually. You can devour it in 3-4 hours. But it's a sad story. Randy Pausch was a college professor at Carnegie Mellon University, a pretty prestigious engineering school in the U.S. And he actually found out that he was terminally ill and had about, I think, maybe 3 to 6 months to live, something like that.
Yeah.
So he ended up giving a last lecture to his college campus. He also made a book out of it and recorded it, and it was just look, this is the last thing I want to leave behind, and really well-spoken guy, amazing lessons there.
Okay.
And so I ended up writing my own last lecture when I was 21.
21.
And it was 10 chapters with 10 words that describe my life. Writing is one of my passions, so I picked 10 words that I really think embody
Okay.
who I am, and I wrote a chapter for each of them.
2 things. Very mature for a 21-year-old to write. Have you reread that since and kind of
I reread it a lot.
do you wince a little bit, or are you really proud of what you wrote?
No, I stand by those 10
Really?
words today, and I think that I've written a lot. I want to write a lot more, but I think that's still one of the best things that I've ever written because it was so personal.
Sure. Okay. I mean, again, really unusual for this type of thinking as a 21-year-old.
Yeah.
And obviously as
it was cathartic in a way, right? It was like, I was graduating from university, kind of looking for what I wanted to do next, and it was kind of like a bit of a, this is my life, and I'm going to leave it behind, and I'm pumped for the next chapter.
Okay, so in a way, irregardless of the outcome of that letter kind of worked at refreshing the LinkedIn page problem as well.
Yeah, totally.
Just independent of whether you got any role or not.
Yeah, there was a point where I surrendered.
Yeah.
I surrendered to that stupid LinkedIn page or whatever people wanted or expected of me. I was really excited to kind of go on my own path, and it no longer bothered me. It no longer mattered, and I think that was a maturity thing.
I mean, it's certainly a maturity thing in terms of, imagining other 21-year-olds being able to produce some sort of introspective work like that. So I want to speak more about, personally, socially, how you felt. Did you get emotional support from your family, or did you find it elsewhere while you were confused about this stuff?
I've always had a supportive family, very tight-knit, close, immediate family. I am not close with any of my extended relatives at all. A lot of them have either passed away or I just haven't been that close with them. So I have a really tight-knit family, and they've always been supportive.
And who's the family?
So I have an older brother, an older sister, and my mother and father have always been supportive.
Okay, so you're the youngest sibling.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a chance that being the youngest sibling made you a little bit more mature and introspective to be able to produce a last lecture at 21?
No, I don't think that had anything to do with it. I think that I was really looking to, as I said, find my own path, or like when I look at the pillars of my life today, it's like work, running, and family.
Okay.
And that's how I spend 99% of my time.
Okay.
In no particular order.
Yeah.
Where and my girlfriend Lucy, who I categorize as family.
Yeah.
So those are how I have stabilized my life.
Okay.
And I think when I look back, I had family, I had running, but I hadn't actually gotten into it to the extent that I have today, and I hadn't found something in terms of work that I was truly passionate about. So I think that I was searching for a couple things there, and ultimately it just took time to unfold and find those things.
Okay. The last lecture.
Yeah.
How did you come across that, and what made you interested in even searching for something like that? Because typically this type of sort of higher brow, introspective, of saying that too much, but sort of introspective material doesn't eventuate till you're older.
So it's the question that begs that, right? If you could show who you are in any way possible, what would you do? How would you show that? And it was funny. So yesterday I applied for a sponsorship, a running sponsorship by a shoe company. Okay. So I'm trying to get sponsored by this company.
Okay.
And I filled out, it was 50 questions, this application. First question was, describe yourself in one sentence. Okay. I spent 4 hours on that question.
What'd you end up with?
I tried to do something witty. I think I said, I have a ton of energy. I live in Amsterdam. You can always find me eating edamame beans, running around, or eating croissants, or something witty like that, because I needed to stand out in front of some odd thousand people that are applying for this sponsorship. But it wasn't necessarily about what I produced. It was just those questions are really fascinating.
Yeah.
Like, if you have X period of time, you have this to show who you are. What are you going to leave behind? And that's what life's all about, right?
Yeah.
Like we have this finite period, and it's the experiences, the people we interact with, it's what we write, what we say. That's all we got, right? Like it's the podcast, it's all those things. And I think about that a lot. I think consciously about, what am I writing? What am I doing? Because, I went, this is a very grim exercise, but I'll go into it. Lucy, my girlfriend, just got a book of like all the popular dates that you need to remember. So friends' birthdays, anniversaries, when people passed away.
Yeah. And
what's really interesting to think about is like when you die, who's going to be writing down that date? Mm-hmm. Right? And for how long? How many generations, right? Like how many people are going to remember who you were? And that's like something I grapple with a lot.
Like, is that, and when you say grapple, like that, it's almost a motivator for you. It makes you focus more on putting out good work, whatever field it is.
Yeah.
Is that really important to you, that you are remembered outside of those immediately that love you?
I think that it's more putting my best foot forward, right? It's like, no matter what happens, but like I'm gonna wake up every day and try and make the biggest impact. So if people actually remember me as my name, less relevant, but like my actions or what I'm involved with, or the things I can facilitate, or develop people, those things matter a lot to me.
Cool. You'd love to know as well that even though consciously that effort won't be recognized, the fact that when you're spoken about by my colleagues in the office, it's always in positive terminology.
Oh, thanks.
And it's, you're one of the few who are always in positive terminology. So none of them will realize, well, that's because Davis is always trying really hard. But that's something you might like to know.
Well, I appreciate that. I think being positive is not easy. It's actually a burden, right? Like I'm genuinely an
certainly in the
introvert.
face of negativity as well.
Yeah, well, that's hard. Yeah, I'm genuinely an introvert. So like I every single day challenge myself to talk to new people because I know it's uncomfortable. That's how we get better, right?
Do you still have? I say still have. I assume introvert comes along with sort of social anxiety. Do you have social anxiety still that you like grapple with?
No, not social anxiety. I never get nervous to talk to people, or public speaking has always come natural to me. However, if I were to choose on my own how to spend 24 hours, my natural inclination would be to choose that alone.
Sure.
And I run a lot. That's my time to hone in and collect my thoughts, but that's my time. And once that time is over, I can dedicate that to others or the company that I work for, right? Yeah. Or other work or reading or interacting in some other way.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I also, if you gave me 24 hours and said, what do you want to do? I'd be like, yeah, I want to do it alone. But no one's ever called me an introvert before. Although I sometimes...
Well, maybe you don't need to be put in one box.
No, but I also score introvert on the personality test as well. But it's like, it's totally natural for me to just be outgoing, which is obviously contrary to what an introvert's meant to be.
Talking to people is tiring.
Yeah. Man, it's the best thing if you as you know, like a really good conversation is like a conversation where you learn something.
Yeah.
Both about yourself, maybe even more importantly, but also about about someone else.
Yeah.
Is fantastic. It really is fantastic, and that's why podcasts are super. I mean, just on the trajectory upwards in terms of the most popular form of media that people are listening to.
Yeah.
It's it's conversations that you're not a part of.
Well,
But even by listening,
peel back the curtain, right? There's a lot of interactions. Talk about being social. There's so many surface level conversations that people have, and that's no fault of anyone. We're all busy. We have things going on. But what we desperately want to do is unveil that curtain and actually get to know someone. And I think those forums are less prevalent today than they probably used to be around a campfire as cavemen.
Yeah.
And you dive right into all the stuff that you want to dive into.
Yeah. All right, Dave. So I want to, like I said, we probably wouldn't actually ask any of these questions. But
That's all good. Where do you want to go?
I want to bring it back to before you went to India.
Okay.
Okay. You found your sort of path, or at least an answer to your confusion about the future, by writing your 10 words in the last lecture.
Yeah.
But even before finding that, and also to for the sponsorship for the running shoe.
Yeah.
So a way you could have stood yourself out was just, I discovered running in the rural hills of Rajasthan.
Oh, so I did write, the last question was, what makes you different? Like, why do you love running? And I told the story that where I fell in love with running, which was in India. So we can get to that later, I guess. But
that's a good question. Okay, this is one which I imagine, if I was in your shoes, I would recognize. I recognize it a lot now, and also when I was younger. But how much did you identify with your peers, whether it was high school, people you met at work, travel, family, when you were at this juncture before you discovered the last lecture? Did you find yourself totally disconnected from what they were about?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I was a pretty bad student in high school. I mean, not
in terms of behavior or grades.
Just my focus. Like I got decent grades, but I was just focused on sports, and school didn't matter. I kind of dove into academia in college and loved everything. Like what my favorite part of college was writing my thesis, and I just loved being in the library for hours on end.
College is 18 to 21?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
And what did you study?
I studied political science and English, so a lot of like political theory, international relations. I wrote my thesis on, I developed my own theory of power and how political agents interact. I was just like really deep into. Was it a unique theory? Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, you got to share it.
So it was called non-agentic power. So it was basically, traditionally, power is perceived through like action. Meaning, if I hold a gun to your head, I have power over you because I'm going to make you do something. Or a military that has more soldiers is more powerful. Or I tell you to go clean your room if I'm a parent, and that's power. I was arguing that power has become dissolved, meaning if you look at the global financial crisis, there was 1 million actors involved, or political agents, that all acted in a certain way. Millions of different bank transactions and different schemes that ultimately became a powerful entity together, but there was no conscious strategy to cause a financial crisis. So it's more that in our connected world, it's quite powerful, which also is daunting. It's complex. It can result in complete failure and complete collapse.
I don't fully follow.
Okay, so
you said non-agenda power.
Non-agentic, meaning there's no two political agents. There's millions and millions acting in a certain way. Where it can be quite powerful.
Despite the fact that the million inputs don't have the same agenda. Correct. They may knowingly or unknowingly be contributing to a power.
Unintended consequences is often the result, right? Okay. So if you think about even on an electrical level, right? There can be blackouts across several countries when one thing happens because we are so interconnected. Those types of things. Computer viruses can spread very quickly because we are so connected through the internet. Okay. But it's not designed that way, right? It's an inherent risk of development.
Okay. Cool. Well, I mean, Was that a lot to tackle for your thesis lecture?
No, that was all fun. But anyway, we can move past the thesis. I think like ultimately, I loved academics, and that separated, I think, my mindset a little bit of like obsessing over my next job or something.
The peers and how you identified with them.
Yeah, so I think like I was more focused on my books a little more than my friends.
Okay.
Like I think like we were, I partied a lot in university, and like I think that I had a slight different mentality. But
wait, take me through that. You partied a lot, and you were into your books.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And that when you say books, non-academic as well, just for fun reading.
No, only
personal
academic.
Interest, only academic. And was this a source of identifying with your peers, or was it non-identifying? You know.
No, identifying. I mean, I'm still close with a lot of my friends from university. I lived in a house with 16 other guys. I lived in this mansion. So I went to school in Schenectady, New York, which is the old capital of General Electric, GE. So
Okay, cool.
I lived in the old, like there's these mansions. They're all student housing now.
Sweet.
So I lived in the old CEO's mansion, which had 5 stories, and it was crazy. Yeah. So we had a big ballroom on the second floor.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good time. So yeah.
Okay. I suppose what I'm trying to get at is and maybe I can only say this best anecdotally, but when I was 21, left the country, like all my friends and actually all my family as well, kind of didn't get it. Like, just didn't get it at all.
Yeah.
Like, why would you go to Mexico? Why aren't you getting a job? And then when I eventually settled in Amsterdam, like why would you do that? And despite my best attempts at explaining, I felt like these people who were the closest to me in my life just didn't understand.
Yeah.
And that was a massive distressor actually for me, and actually still is. I'm about to go home and figure out what the consequences are.
Yeah.
But that is a distressor which ultimately caused a lot of doubt as well as to whether I was on the right path.
Yeah, totally.
Am I right to assume this, or is 10 other people saying the exact same thing right? Because maths would suggest that maybe I'm wrong.
For sure. So I totally felt the same way. I think a lot of the pressure that I felt was, to be honest, the easy way, or what's comfortable, is generally where things push you towards, whether it's people or society, right? It's like, I probably could have gotten a job in New York City at a, consulting firm with a lot of my friends, and that's what normally happened on the trajectory that I was on. And I had no interest in doing that.
Okay.
Did
you vocalize that disinterest?
And
did you have people questioning how you could be so ill-informed to not want to do that?
Not verbally to me, but for sure people judge.
Subtly and passively.
Well, it's, what are you doing after university? I don't know, I'm going to India. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
I'm going to live in a village and sleep on a straw bed.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good time.
Was that ever distressful for you? The fact that no one understood really why you were doing what you were doing?
I had a romanticized version in my head of what I was going to do, so I put them to bed. Right, I had this image of myself climbing atop a mountain in the Himalayas and being like, I figured out the world, and I had this dream that was going to happen. That dream never actually came to be reality. So rather than trying to make them understand, it was more like a competitive edge. Like, well, look, I'm going to show you that I've done the right thing, and you're going to wish that you had, done what I did rather than what you did. I've never needed a ton of support. Like I committed to what I was doing in my mind, and didn't need people's approval or was concerned by their disapproval. Yeah. Okay.
as a younger man, you said you partied a lot. This might be independent of partying.
Yeah.
Has drugs or alcohol ever had a significant impact on you? For better or for worse?
Drugs, no. Alcohol, I mean, I fell into a pretty big party routine in university, and I think that I committed to myself, like, I'm going to get it all out of my system, or try to, so that when I graduate, I'm like, I'm done with this shit. Yeah. I'm moving on. I'm starting a new chapter, and I actually think I executed on that pretty well in the sense that
you don't. Did you? Okay, sorry. Continue.
Well, I have a bit of a. I would say I'm a man of extremes, so I needed to fill that void in some way of like a little excessiveness, and running is certainly where I put my energy into.
So like when you go out, you'd love to be the one that like finished the bottle of vodka rather than
maybe not that so much, but more like by routine of just, I'm a person of routine, so it's just like, yeah, I'm gonna party a lot because that's my routine, and I'm gonna do that, and then that's just my routine, so I'm gonna keep doing that.
Okay.
And I was certainly ready to move on from that, I think, as I matured and got older.
Yeah. I think with something like travel, people say, I just got to get out of my system,
Yeah.
And it's never something you can just get out of the system. But I'm starting to come more and more to the conclusion that drinking a lot, or I should say number of times you're drunk or high, actually does have a end point where you just don't enjoy it anymore.
Well, getting out of the system is a flawed argument. I mean, there's no the system is our lives here, right? Like what is the system? It's more actually.
It's not like the fixed amount that you just push through your experience and it's done.
I just gotta get out of my system. Yeah. It's actually what it really is getting it in your system.
Yeah.
It's actually enjoying alcohol or whatever, or socializing, partying, whatever you want to call it. I consciously said, this is going to be a chapter, and it's going to be a good time, and I can continue these things responsibly throughout the rest of my life. But there's other things that this world has to offer, and I'm really pumped to do it.
Yeah, stoked. I tend to agree with that as well. Something a little bit more lighthearted. This isn't necessarily lighthearted. What has been for you the most surprising cuisine? Which is to say, it just took you totally off guard.
So I had never had Indian food before I moved to India. I mean, maybe once or twice, actually. Like, I had never eaten Indian food. So I was living in a rural village called Bagru in Rajasthan, which is quite a conservative state in northern India.
22.
Yep. And there was pretty much no meat in the village of Bagru. I mean, not openly. So I became a vegetarian pretty much from day one. So. And
you continue that to now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So say more about the food then. What was?
Well, it was just the simplicity of it. It was just so incredible. Like just simple grains and vegetables became more than enough to live on happily and full and satisfied.
Yeah.
And that was just amazing. So I started running more seriously actually then, and I used to, for breakfast, pick up a samosa. Do you know what an Indian samosa is?
Explain it.
It's like a potato. It's kind of fried. It's essentially like a fried potato. Kind of like a croissant type of breakfast, but like heavier.
Okay.
So I'd pick it up for, I don't know, like 10 rupees, like basically nothing.
Yeah.
And that's all I needed. And it was just simple living after my runs, and that was incredible.
Cool. I want to try and get the age before you found the last lecture.
Okay.
however I can, and try and realize something actionable.
Okay.
That if you were a sort of disenfranchised, just coming out of university person without much direction, something actionable that they can look at. So, tell me about. Tell me about
that time. I can just tell you about that time of my life. I don't know.
No. Specifically, book, movie, music, something that had massive impact.
Yeah, for sure. So, I read Ulysses by James Joyce, which is a
classic.
900-page epic. Takes place in 24 hours in Dublin on June 16th. And I started reading it in class, and actually, I read it actually my first year at university, and then I continued my studies of that one book for the next 3 years. So by my fourth year, I just took an independent class with a professor trying to get my paper published on this one book because I was so obsessed with it.
Wow.
So if you don't know, it's about two guys, Stephen Dedalus and Leopold Bloom, who literally wander throughout Dublin on a single day. It starts at 8 a.m., finishes at 2 a.m., and the whole book is them kind of finding their way. Stephen is a young kid, he's maybe 18, 19. Bloom is an older guy, and they're both looking for something. Father figure, son figure. And it's more just about the journey of the search and the stream of life that takes them through Dublin. And there's just something about that book that, it's so poetically written. It's just, Joyce is incredible, but I think that book in a lot of ways, I identified with both characters in different ways of they're searching for something.
As a 20-year-old.
Yeah. And there's different things that fixate them, right? So there's alcohol, and there's sex, and there's food, more of the physical things, right? But then there's the family aspect of it. There's religion and politics, and all those things get thrown in the mix, and they're identifying with different aspects of it, work and fantasies and dreams and goals and where they want to be in 20 years. And there's people who are poorer than them and richer than them, and they're trying to see all of these things in Dublin in a very transformative time, and it's just incredible. So I think that book kind of prompted me to start thinking about a lot of those things.
Okay, so you clearly took a massive interest in it.
Yeah.
Got you thinking about things. Did it have any? Does it have a lasting impact on you? And did it have any tangible impact in you making the decision to sort of reject the idea of going to New York?
Well, for sure, it still has an impact today. I collect copies of Ulysses in different languages.
Okay.
So
you're a big fanboy of the Ulysses.
Yeah, for sure. So Joyce is the man, and
is he Irish?
Yeah, he's Irish
cool.
author. So what's crazy about it, I just bought actually a book about how Joyce wrote Ulysses. It was kind of from his perspective and how many years he wrote. It was written in 3 different locations, and Joyce was actually outcasted from Ireland as he wrote it because it was so risque. It was because it had sex involved and all these different things, masturbation, all these crazy ideas at the time.
Sure.
Anyway, so yeah, I think that played a profound role in terms of, what was your other question?
So you answered whether it still has something to do with you today.
Yeah.
But actionably, was there anything about that book that made you reject the idea of going to New York and pursuing the philanthropic route?
Perhaps. I think that I really had to take a step back and look at, so a big theme in Ulysses is what they call the stream of life.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a river that runs through Dublin, and it's a constantly flowing stream, and you have to find your own path. And like I really took that to heart. Of there's a million different ways to go about this thing that we call the world and life, and like I gotta find my own stream here. And it was just this realization of like, there's no one right way to do this. I'm going to apply for this entrepreneurial program, see if I get in. Hopefully, go to Uganda. Maybe I won't, but it's all good because there's
in that stream of life. Is it implied that there is one right stream for you, or is it more just like look at all the options in front of you? You can do any of these.
Yeah, it's constantly. Well, it depends which philosopher you would ask.
Okay.
Right?
Like who's you mean philosopher's interpretation of the stream of life?
Well, Joyce, grabs a lot of like Hobbes and Shakespeare and these different things, but like ultimately it's your actions and what you do that dictate that stream.
Okay.
So it's like if you love someone and that they're part of your stream, right? If you want to dedicate your life to certain work, that's part of your stream, and those are different directions you take, but there's certainly no one right way.
That's cool. It's making me think of something that I came to the realization of while I was just away.
Yeah.
But it's something that I want the podcast to be themed around a lot. In fact, it might even be the artwork of it.
Yeah.
There's a book, Musashi, The Way of the Warrior. And it is just about one man who has a singular focus to become the greatest swordsman who ever lived. Japanese samurai. And I haven't read the book, but I've listened now 3 times to a 4-hour epic breakdown between 2 very famous podcasters, Jocko Willink and Tim Ferriss. And at the end of it, there's like an hour sort of decompression of what it was, what the point of it was. And the closing lines of the book essentially just say that we are swimming in the sea, going towards the depths, and that's where you're going. You're going towards the depths, and everything is just fishes. Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's quite beautiful the way that Musashi wrote it. But Tim Ferriss was kind of riffing on that idea a bit. And he was pointedly asked, like, what is your path? Because that is something that we're certainly all looking for, whether we realize it or not. Certain behaviors we do are conducive on, a subconscious direction we want to go with our lives.
Yeah.
But younger, something I would have loved to have thought about, or at least been able to visualize, which I can now when I was younger, was, Tim said, and this is a man, just for context, who has experienced success in multiple fields and pretty much did it independent every time. So he's if he doesn't know what his path is, that's not giving much hope to us. But he said, if I was asked, I wouldn't be able to tell you what my path was, but I know for certain when I'm not on it. And it really, I don't know if it has the same effect on other people, but for me, it really almost gives me a tingle. It really resonates with me so much. Like I know when I'm doing something that it's not for me. It's not my path.
Yeah.
And so I envisioned what we all are is a man or woman just standing a couple planks in on a drawbridge, and you can see the drawbridge in front of you, clear as day, but you can't see where it ends. It's all misty around. You know that you can't really go any other direction. You have to follow that bridge, but there is not sufficient enough planks.
Yeah.
And you've got one plank of wood under your arm. And so you're just that person standing at the next spot on the bridge where you've got to lay that plank of wood. And if you do something that's not on your path, you're going to fall off the bridge. And you're going to have to go back to the top and walk back to that same spot again. The only time you can put down another plank is when you are behaving along your path.
Yeah.
which you might not necessarily be able to know exactly what it is, but you should be able to tell when you're not doing it.
Yeah, well, that's really reassuring because I think that's a great analogy. A lot of people think that it's so hard to get back onto your path, and sometimes it is, but you really know what it is, right? So it's like if you screw up and you make a decision that brings you astray, and you're no longer on your path, usually, yeah, you might have to clean that up, but the goal can always be getting back, right?
Yeah.
No person is ever always on their thing, right? You got to try new things. You screw up, but if you can get back there, then that's, I think, just recognizing where you're supposed to be is probably the biggest challenge.
Worst case scenario, you might have knocked a few of those planks that you set up beforehand.
Yeah.
You're never starting again.
Yeah.
And another thing for that is the bridge actually never ends. It'll never end. You're not working towards a definable end point. That bridge will keep going, and until you're 90 years old, you're still laying down planks of wood on your path. So you said the stream of river? No.
Stream of life. Yeah.
You said the stream of life and all the different options. Yeah. That's why I said, was there one specific stream for him? Was that what they were trying to say, or was it the options before you?
Yeah.
But that's a theme, nonetheless, that I want to try and convey through the guests.
Yeah.
But I'll move on in terms of things that influenced you. So we said that Ulysses was hugely influential. What about a aphorism, a mental model, a quote, or even a piece of music? Is there anything else that you kind of return to all the time?
So in ultra running, it's very common to have a mantra. Like it is. I don't know if I've ever met anyone who's completed like a 100-mile race. It doesn't have a mantra that they always fall back onto.
Just pre-specify that you're an ultra runner.
Yeah. So yes. I enjoy running long distances.
And your longest distance so far?
100 miles, yeah.
100 miles, yeah. Okay. And you're doing another big one soon?
I just finished one in Arizona about a month ago. Yeah.
Okay,
a little over a month ago. Yeah.
Okay, so go on.
But that's actually gotten me to appreciate the value of a mantra.
Okay.
So for this last race, I actually wrote them on I carried a water bottle throughout, like it's a handheld water bottle.
Yeah.
You kind of strap onto your arm or your hand, and then you run with it for fluid.
Yeah.
So I wrote, so there's a couple, like it's just running. So simplifying the task, I think, is a big thing of just, there can be a lot of, whether it's running what you're doing or something socially or at work, simplifying it.
Yeah.
It's just running. And
also just debasing it to such a menial task that you would be, you'd laugh at it in any other circumstance. Yeah. Okay.
So that's one of them. The second is something that I read somewhere, and the abbreviation is BALANCE, BALANCE, which stands for be a leader and never concede ever. Okay. And it's a bit more hardcore, I guess you could say. But leadership is something that I value a lot, and I think all good leaders never concede. And I think that was just a commitment that I made to myself to never quit, right? And holding that hard within myself was powerful as a mantra. And then the third mantra that I had was just trust your training. So that can be training, for me, that was physically in terms of running, but also like if you set your mind to something, trust it. You're putting in hours or days or years to do something, trust it. Yeah. And that's what I think about a lot.
And are these just mental notes for you as you're running through, or are you physically saying them?
Once in a while I'll say them out loud, but mostly mental. I did write them down,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a crew that came with me, some friends and family, so they know about the "It's just running" mantra. Actually, I have a running coach who advised me on that mantra, and it's kind of his mantra as well. So it's like, look, it's just running, and that's something we can all grapple onto.
I mean, I've never ran like that, but I can imagine that being so effective at, you're feeling pain or you're feeling bored or you're like, why did I do any of this? And it's just like, oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's just running. It's one foot in front of the other. It's what we're born to do.
Okay, and so that now is something that's important for you in the ultra running.
Yeah.
Obviously, balance is for business as well, which I suppose we should say you're definitely one of the one of the highest leaders at a company that employs 600 people, right?
Yep.
And you were one of the maybe not founding members, but one of the very early employees.
Yeah, I think I was employee number 60 something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that applies in your professional life as well.
Yeah.
The
definitely.
balance, at least.
Yeah. I think that setting an example is the I don't know, one of the ways that I would lead, that I do lead. I think that's like I love feedback and criticism. One time, someone criticized my work ethic. I got pissed.
Okay.
That's something that strikes me, because it's like, if you
that's what you hold yourself, your whole identity is formed by.
Because that work ethic is something that no one can ever take from you.
Mm.
You can have wrong inputs or wrong insights, or if you work with numbers and data, it's like black and white, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, work ethic and leadership is something that no one should ever be able to take from you, because you've just put it on the table, right?
Yeah.
It's like, this is what it is, and owning that it takes, I think, confidence and believing in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that I think about that a lot. Balance, be a leader, and never concede ever.
Yeah. When you were younger, did you have any of these?
No mantras when I was younger.
Any sort of any visualization you'd have if you got in a certain mood, or if you got in a certain anxiety?
Well, I told you about the visualization of myself on top of the Himalayas with the sunset going down.
So that wasn't actually, just flippant. That was a real thing.
No, that was a real thing. Like, I actually thought, it's like, God, when I'm older, I'm just gonna travel maybe, and it's gonna be this grand thing. I'm gonna climb mountains. It's gonna be so beautiful. I'd watch, documentaries or something, see photos of people exploring. It's like, why can't I do that?
Okay. Okay, cool. But even you got to Rajasthan, and you never went to Nepal, right?
Well, I did go to Nepal, but no, it was total bullshit. Like, it's not real.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like, shit, this isn't what I thought.
Yeah.
It's like, it's 100. I do Fahrenheit, so it's like, 40 degrees. You can barely breathe, and I was, it's not what you think, and you have to just deal with it. That was. Patience, I think, helps there. Like, whatever you aspire, whatever's in your head. If anyone's ever been to India, I think they'll appreciate this. It's like, it takes a real, I would say, surrender to the senses. India assaults your senses: smell, touch, hearing, right? And all these noises, pollution, public defecation, right? Colors, poverty. It just crushes you.
Sure.
And you have to actually surrender to it until you can see kind of the beauty behind it and live in it. And I reached that point. I was like, oh, I am Neo, right? I can see through this. I can get through it. And that was such a powerful moment.
Okay, go on. Talk more about that.
Well,
because you're at this age, you're still in your early 20s, 22, 23.
Yeah. Well, I think to. So I was living in a small village. I was the only outsider, only white person, and there was a couple experiences where I was. I'll tell the story actually. So I was living with this family, and I was living with a community of printers, block printers. So you take a piece of wood, you carve it out by hand, you stamp natural dyes, and you print on fabric. So this one day, my host father comes up to me and says, "All right, we're going on a journey. Grab a sheet and some water. We're going to be gone." So I hop on his motorcycle with 13 other guys. We're on motorcycles, and we start driving out of the village. It's really hot. I mean, like super hot.
Yeah.
I had no idea how long we'd be gone. So this is probably at like 4 p.m. So we start driving. Sun starts setting.
It's like desert hot.
Desert,
yeah.
We're in the desert. Yeah, we're in the desert. So I could only drink filtered water when I first got there. So I had like a Camelback backpack filled with 2 liters of water.
How soon into your living there?
This was probably 2.5 months in.
Okay, so you're still fresh.
Yeah, fresh.
To a degree.
And this was kind of like my welcoming, like, all right, he's been around a while. Like, we kind of like him, but this will be a fun adventure for him.
Let's treat him like one of us.
Yeah, we'll treat him like one of us. Yeah. So none of these people besides the guy I was living with spoke any English.
Okay.
So we start driving. I'm on the back of a motorcycle. If anyone sat on the back of a motorcycle, like it starts crushing your back after 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
So it was 4.5 hours before we stopped.
Yeah.
And we get to this school in the middle of the desert, like rural India, and I start recognizing all these people. Wait, I know you. Other people that were there, and they had actually, they were all barefoot, and they had walked from my village starting 2 days earlier to that school. And I was like, what the hell are you guys doing? And finally, someone told me that they were...
So you still haven't been told what
I still didn't know what we were doing. So finally, someone tells me, like, hey, we're on this religious pilgrimage.
Okay.
A Hindu religious pilgrimage to this village called Diggy.
Yeah.
And we're going to this temple. So we eat dinner at this school. That's what we're doing. So someone feeds me. You sit on the ground. Someone they passed some puri to me, and we hung out for like an hour. Someone then stole my sandals actually outside of this school.
Okay.
So that was a whole ordeal. So we were looking for my sandals
in a sea of thousands of Indian people, or more than thousands.
In this school, there was like a couple hundred like piled in for dinner.
Okay.
But then we leave the school, and then we're back on the motorcycles. We're like a motorcycle gang going down in the desert, and all of a sudden we see thousands of people on this highway. Okay, so these massive trucks filled with water, and then a couple hundred people behind the truck. So it was like different villages from throughout Rajasthan that were walking to this other village.
Yeah.
And every village had its own like water tank and like people behind the truck. And they'd be blasting music, playing music. Then every couple hours they'd stop, pull over to the side of the road, set up like a big kind of buffet, and everyone would kind of like dance and eat music. So actually what I figured out what my group was doing was we were not like the walkers, which was the more religious thing to do. We were kind of like the spectators of the pilgrimage.
Yeah.
And it was a way for these guys to just kind of like see the pilgrimage and also participate in the dance parties and eat a lot of free food. So I would pull over to the side. I was like literally the only white guy in, who knows how far.
And was that like very obvious? Were people just looking at you, trying to talk to you?
Yes and no. It was like such a massive, chaotic commotion. Like these dance parties were just seas of thousands of people, and I'd just like hop in, dance. By the way, everyone is 100% sober, like not a drip of alcohol.
Yeah, that's a good point to make.
And it was crazy chaotic.
Yeah.
Like, you'd think that this was
and they've walked
club,
for 2 days,
an
and
underground club in
Amsterdam.
Yeah, slept on the stars. So finally we get to Diggy, and it's probably 3 a.m. now. We get to like the edge of the city, the town, whatever it is, and there's police officers there. And like, yeah, from this point on, only walkers are allowed to walk any further. You guys have to get off your bikes because it's so crowded. Like, it's this huge pilgrimage. And then they're like, but that guy, he can come through with the motorcycle because I was white.
Sure.
And I felt horrible. Like, it was this huge sinking feeling.
The caste system at play.
Yeah, totally. So I got to go through with the my host father there, and then everyone else in our group had to walk the last 5K into the town. And then we stayed at the same caste temple that the people I was with were at, kind of like overnight. So we just laid down our sheets. We like all spooned 15 of us next to each other. We sleep for like 2 hours. We get up in the morning. Someone hands me like a metal bucket with water. It's like, hey, take fresh. I said, what is take fresh? And everyone's going out and defecating in the street.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I don't have to go to the bathroom. Yeah. So then we walked across town, went to the temple, and you read about these stampedes, right? Where people die. I now know what that is like. It is insane. Yeah. If I had fallen, I would have.
Did anyone get injured to your knowledge?
They must have been. Okay. I mean, it was crazy. So you have these groups of people, maybe 20 or 30, that go there as a group, and they're all clinging on to each other because if like one person falls, then the rest can pick them up. Like, it's an actual thing. Where
it's an actual stampede.
Yeah, it's for real. So you try and get into.
Is it so chaotic just because of how many people there are,
or
is there an urgency to get through?
I mean, this is a tiny temple. Like it's like a bedroom that's the size of where you're actually trying to get into, and there's over a million people were trying to get there in like a one weekend time period.
Sure.
So it's just crazy, and people go in there, and then that was it. You walk through the temple, and then we hopped on the motorbikes and drove back, and I was also out of water by that point.
Sure.
So dehydrated, so hot, and anyway, to tie it all back. Did you ever have
any threat of like, fuck, I could be in trouble here, or you felt safe the whole time?
No, it was amazing because I knew if actually something had happened to me, like if I were to just die in that stampede, I honestly don't think I would have ever been found, and it was one of the most liberating moments. Like,
go on. Why would you never be found?
Because I was in the middle of nowhere. No one knew where I was. No one would have ever. I was just that like remote, and I just don't think that. Yeah, it was just like, when's the last time you've ever gone somewhere that nobody in the world like knows where it is, right? And it's that type of thing where then I could go back in. It was like I was walking on water, right? It's like I can go back into the world, and we went back to Brew. I could hop on Facebook, chat with my family, right? But then I could also enter into this other world of like totally rogue.
Yeah.
And there is something
unlike anything you've ever experienced.
Yeah.
You said it really liberated you, just like because it's.
Well, it's like you're in these chains, right?
Like it's no longer up to you.
No longer up to you, but also like I wasn't. Think of like what motivates your actions in a normal day, right? Work, money, positive reinforcement, relationships, all those things like thrown out the window. It's just like it's a bit barbaric, I guess you can say, rudimentary, like living in poverty, and actually like what mattered most was just having fun, right? and also teaching kids. I was spending a lot of time with kids and trying to be a role model for them. Like that's it simplifies so much.
Okay, that's a really incredible story. Do you know if they go on that pilgrimage every year, and if there's been any other Westerners that've gotten the privilege to go?
No, I don't know. I've looked it up online. Honestly, it's just it seems like a relatively small pilgrimage. There's an expression
by Indian standards.
Well, I hope no Indians get offended when I say this. There is an expression in some parts of India. It's like 7 days in India, 10 days of holiday. It's like there's so many Hindu holidays, especially in the area that I was living in, that were celebrated, which was awesome. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like so many of these types of things that it's hard to. It's not like a very special thing. It's just this is what it was. It was kind of a vacation.
Yeah. Amazing. So we got to that from asking about any sort of mental mode, or you said the mantra that you would refer to.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention a mantra as well, something that I also learned relatively recently, but it's actually really effective, and it's something that I would have definitely liked to have known when I was younger.
Yeah.
And it's a bit more ability to deal with your emotions in a very objective way, which is to say, like, an ability to recognize an emotion you're feeling for what it is, separate from the event, even if the emotion is totally justified because of the event, at least recognizing what you have, and then dealing with it, which might mean experiencing it fully or getting rid of it because it's bad for you. I thought anger, which is an emotion that a lot of young people will feel a lot, is something that rarely produces good.
Yeah.
And sort of an aphorism, a mental model that I think of whenever I get angry now, and it works really well. For me, visualizing things just works really well. And it's anger is a hot coal you hold in your hand, waiting to throw it at somebody else.
Doesn't do any good.
No. Even if you
hold it or if you throw it.
Even if you get to throw it at the other person, you've still caused yourself more damage.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And so that's something that I feel like works really well.
What's interesting is, like, where does that quote come from? That's actually what I've been more asking myself, like, why am I actually angry? Like, what is actually causing this,
okay.
Right?
But is it wrong to have that feel angry when someone does something to you that makes you angry? You know?
No. Sometimes though it's like the coal ends up in my hand. I'm like, why is this? And it's actually because I don't actually understand. Like, I'm angry because I actually don't understand that person's motives, right? Or I don't understand their background enough, or I'm angry at something I can't even control, so I'm just gonna drop it, right? And I think understanding the root cause of anger helps me, at least.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Having a more empathetic view of when someone does something wrong to you.
Yeah.
I agree. I would almost take that for granted, though, as a part of being empathetic, as a part of trying to just be a good citizen, a good person, to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
But then sometimes people just do things like benefit of the doubt can certainly apply for so much. I think it takes someone really it takes a level of enlightenment to get to the point where you can really recognize emotions immediately as they come in and dismiss them, or not even feel emotions that, you know, the other person might have intended you to feel. Maybe that's a good place to go, but
have you had, like, anger problems? Like, has that been something that you're...
I don't think so. It's certainly not a problem. I don't lash out at people ever, especially physically.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I have anger problems. I think I'm a really baseline, optimistic, happy person, and having this mental model has done wonders for me.
Nice.
Anecdotally, I'll say just a few weeks ago, I got totally scammed, totally ripped off in Morocco.
Really? What happened?
I'm a pretty stingy guy, especially when I'm traveling.
Yeah.
And I was in Fez, and I was determined to find the absolute per day cheapest desert tour I could find, because I thought that they're all taking me to the exact same
It's
location.
the same thing.
So I'm not sure how much different it's going to be.
Yeah.
And it turns out I was right. They're all the same. But still, I got totally screwed. And I found the per day cheapest, and it was a guy who was staying in my hotel, who organised tours. So there was like box tick for legitimacy. He's not totally random, but he sat with me for a while, and I think everything he told me was lies. But he just said a lot of things to try and make me friendly towards him, and I was very friendly towards him, and was sort of really interested in his life, which might have been total bollocks.
Yeah.
However, I was sold on the idea that the reason it's cheaper is because he only sells to some of his friends in the hotels and the guests that come through, and he's a Berber, which means he's one of the desert people. It's a separate culture from Moroccan or Algerian or Islamic. It's of the Sahara Desert, the Berber culture. And he was a Berber, and he's showing me photos on his phone, and he's like, yeah, that's my brother, that's my cousin, we're all Berbers, you stay, my cousin picks you up tomorrow, you stay with my brother in the camp, and you're going to go with these people. And so I was sold. I was like, that sounds amazing, and it was definitely the cheapest one. I paid him half up front, and then even though he insisted I paid all of it up front, and I was like, just no.
Yeah.
Anyway, I paid half up front, and I got in the car. Just the guy had zero relation to him. The taxi ride there, I thought, that's a bit weird. It's not a good sign.
Yeah.
Got to the desert, and it was just a total sham. It was a total scam. We were on camels that were clearly abused. They didn't want me sitting on them. We were served horrible food. We were freezing cold. It was shocking. And I had booked for 3 nights and 4 days, and I insisted after the first night that I wanted to go home. But I'd already paid on arrival there, and I was just told lies and lies and lies and lies about how they'd already spent the money, and there's no way they could refund me.
Yeah.
The point was I had a lot of legitimate angst to be angry at this guy, Sahan, who would just smile and lie to my face.
Did he go on the trip with you?
No. He stayed in Fez and organised it because the thing was like it's his brothers. Hassan was the man who stayed at the camp who I met there, and he would just lie and smile through his teeth at me. I ended up having to just commit and do the whole thing, and I was really angry, and I was thinking to myself, like, it got so extreme where I was thinking, I know that the money's in his pocket, I could take it and then leave. That was really extreme. I was never going to do that. But I was thinking, I'm going to fucking ruin these guys online. I'm going to leave them the worst reviews ever. I'm going to go back to that hotel. And anyway, a lot of anger reactions. And I visualized it a lot. And whenever I felt angry over the next few days, like, why the fuck am I here in this like grim, dirty hostel, which is multiple kilometers from the sand, which means it's not that easy to get to, which is the whole reason you're there. And no food, and I just, I visualized the coal in my hand and realized that there is absolutely nothing I can do over this. And it honestly just was so good. I would literally look at my hand and just drop the coal, and then I immediately start to appreciate that
where you were.
I was in the Sahara Desert. Even if I was in shit conditions and paid too much for it, I was in the Sahara Desert. It's like,
do you meet any cool people along the way?
No, like, I'm not kidding you, Davis. I was fucking rogue out there. But I took one day, full day. I just walked the streets of, they're not streets. It's really grim out there, outside of the tourist area.
Yeah.
That's where I stayed. And I took a full day walk, and I walked past lots of desperate people, lots of desperate kids that were just filthy, unbelievably filthy.
Yeah.
Looked like they hadn't cleaned for days at least. And I took a really long hike in through the desert dunes and took some amazing photos. So I got a great experience out of it. It was independent of Sahan and his tour, but I might not have been able to fully have appreciated the exceptional area that I was had I not been able to get rid of that anger.
Totally.
Because it could have been so easy to have just stewed on that anger and just cursed him out, and gotten on the internet first chance I got and ruined them, because they do have a public image. So
you got to drop the coal.
Yeah, really. And I thought that was really good. So obviously this is about for young person very unclear about their future. What are some actionable things they can do, or through guests like yourself, what are some stories that they can be somehow inspired by or just reassured by in the pursuit of what they're going through? I think the most actionable thing we found was the last lecture, which I haven't read, which I should. Sounds like most people should too. And perhaps even composing your own last lecture. And if you're comfortable asking your parents to read it, or maybe a friend.
Yeah. Well, I think some of those big questions, like, no matter if you're 16 or 18 or 20 or 50 years old, if you could stand up in front of your closest friends or even strangers, what would you say? That is a big question.
What do you asked?
Like,
what would you say? What do you mean?
Like, what would you say to those people? That is the question. What would you say to those people? You can talk about anything.
Okay.
There's no agenda. It's like you have an hour of people's attention. It's a lecture. What are you going to teach people? What are you going to say? And yeah, I think that lecture, that process for me, and the way I designed it was just through the 10 chapters of words, but that doesn't need to be the way that everyone does it. It can be chronological order of your life. It can just be a lecture about
the happiest moment of your life.
Yeah, it can be about science, because that's what you're passionate about. You think everyone should know about climate change, like that. It can. There's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
But it genuinely usually strikes it what the core of who you are is.
Cool. All right. Well, let's do one or two more real quick ones.
Cool.
What is something weird or superstitious that you do? Did do or still do?
Superstitious or weird? Do you have any examples?
I should have an example. I play a game with eggs called egg boxing. Okay?
Yeah, where you smash the eggs.
Exactly.
And that's quite popular here in the Netherlands. Yeah,
and the egg who wins, he sits on a special spot in the fridge and he can't be eaten, because the only way he's going to be eaten is if he's defeated by the incoming egg. So.
Okay. Wow, that's a good one. I think, so there's been a few times where I've had like a small amount of tequila before I run, like the night before.
Okay.
And I've had amazing runs, so I usually try and drink some tequila, like just a tiny
Sometimes bit. Or every time?
Sometimes, but it's...
Is a tiny bit a shot?
Yeah, like, no, I'll sip it on the rock, so
okay.
yeah.
All right.
It's like the magic potion.
Nice, yeah. I mean, I can't see any reason for that to improve your running, so it's definitely something superstitious.
Tell me that it is.
Yeah. Yes, so I'll save this actually for the very final question. So, one more big one, and then the final question.
Okay.
Through your journey so far, you're 27, right?
Yep.
27. So significantly younger than all the other guests will be, at least when it's released. But through all of this, through your last life, which I'll just quickly track, 18 through to 21, college.
Yep.
At seemingly a cool university where you really got to Ulysses and read a lot, but also like to party.
Yep.
India for 3 years.
It was like a year and a half.
Year and a half.
Yeah.
India for a year and a half, where you learnt a lot about entrepreneurship, but also crazy new culture. And then for the company that we work at now, I don't know if we sad enough, that I also work at, but where you've seen it go from a pretty obscure startup to now a multi-million-dollar international business.
Yep.
Okay. Through all of this, what have you been avoiding?
I think so. Through all of that, I'll answer your question in a minute. Something I always wonder is like, a lot of people say that they're so busy, right? So busy, I don't have time for this. I'm so busy, I don't have time for this. I feel that too. I actually genuinely feel busier than I've ever been.
Yeah.
But it makes me think that I'm just like everyone else, and we're all just really busy in this world. So I think through all of that, one thing that I'm missing is like actually making time for other things that I want to do, or other things that I want to learn, or just being more selfless with how I spend my time.
Okay.
And I think that I've been
with a particular person in mind.
No, not person. Just like, just like I have a list of books that I really want to read, and like foundations I want to spend more time with, and think, just spending more time on thinking and being more proactive in those scenarios rather than reactive on, I got a million things coming at me for 24 hours a day. I actually don't think that that's uncommon. Like, I don't want to sit here and say that I'm busier than other people, because I think that's bullshit. But I do think that it's really difficult, or I struggle with this, just carving out hours and minutes. Like, that's tough.
Okay. So you want to make more time for yourself somehow.
Yeah.
Okay. Successful. Who? I wanted to ask it without being less general, because it's a tough question to answer generally. But who in your? Oh no, that's what it was. In your life, who's the most successful person you've met in your life, by your definition?
Well, I think that my mother is talking about creating time and doing proactive things. Her job is her children and her family, and like that's her adoption of that, right? It's like she actually takes so much pride in that work of like raising a family and being supportive. I think that's success right there. Like, that's incredible. I think that being able to give feedback is really important. I think that I work with a lot of colleagues who I'm really comfortable to give feedback to, and they'll give it right back to me. I think that's really constructive.
Cool.
And I value that a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So I work with quite a few people who I would define as successful, like very successful people, whether it, screw titles and all that shit.
Yeah.
Like I actually think that I work with a lot of really smart, hardworking people that I'm motivated to go to work every day because of them.
Great. With that being said, could you give your own definition of success?
Yeah. So I think there's two types. I think one is like self-proclaimed and when you're proud of your own success, and then the second is when other people view you as successful. So for the first part, they're quite different. The first part would be more of like a stamp of approval, right? So it's like, when you put your name on something, you better damn be sure that you're proud of that, right? And I think that when you can reach that degree of just utter confidence in what you're putting out, like that's successful in your own right? Because you're not, there's no doubt in that. It's just 100% confident in what you're doing, right or wrong.
Yeah, regardless of what any feedback is.
Yeah, it's just like I'm giving this my best shot, and I think that if you can reach that level in anything you do, professionally or personally, like that's self success. The second piece is a bit bigger and more difficult, and that's more like inspiration development. And I always say, like, one of the most challenging things is you can sit in a room with 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people, and to teach those people something of value, it's really hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And I think that if they can actually, if other people can look up to you and actually say, I learned something, then that's success in my mind.
Cool. Finally, last big one.
Yeah.
If you're 22 right now, sort of lost, but full of potential with the whole world at your feet, what would you do now?
So I'd go back to the stream of life. It's always flowing. There's going to be a lot of rapids along the way. It's never going to feel clean. It's never going to feel smooth. But the bumpy stuff is okay. Like I would actually say that embrace the chaos, embrace the unknown. Challenge is the best thing that you can seek out. And I still do it today. It's like there's so much comfort, and things will point you in the direction of comfort. It's okay to resist that and go the opposite way. I think you'll learn a whole lot more that way. And for sure, I think something you asked me before is like, did you have a lot of people telling you that you were going in the wrong direction? I might have. I don't even remember. Like, I'm sure that was happening. I just tried to block it out because who cares?
It didn't stick.
Yeah, it didn't stick.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's more of a philosophical way to do it, but about actionable skills and physically, what would you do?
So I'm obsessed with the art of communication. I think it's really fascinating. There are so many ways you can explain your ideas, whether it's verbally or in writing, on email, so many different ways. I think pick one and get really good at it.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah,
whether
that's bloody good advice.
So, for me, writing has always been a passion of mine, and just really trying to understand how I can persuade people or sell people, right? Sell products.
Yeah.
That's effective. And I think that art form is fascinating.
Yeah.
The other thing is
pick a form of communication.
Yeah.
And get really good at it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't need to get good at all of them.
No.
Right.
If you can become a good speaker, it's probably the best one. Writing maybe the biggest audience, but like in terms of day to day, no matter what you do, doesn't have to be business, but just life, friends.
Yeah, and it doesn't
figure out how to speak.
Like or communication, right? So you could take this a step further, and there's music can be a form of communication, or media. So like social media, developing a personal brand, developing a product brand, like take it that route too. I think that there's some really good marketers out there.
Yeah, certainly.
Which I would classify in terms of communication.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, for sure, being able to communicate your ideas effectively, I would say 80% of it is just being confident in what you're saying. The way that I am speaking right now, it's like, you better believe me. And no matter what I'm saying, it's like just 80% of it is the way that you say it.
Yeah. And
20% is the content, right? That still needs to exist. That still needs to be of value. But sales is all about effectively communicating.
That 80-20, the Pareto principle, that applies to sales without a doubt. Yeah. But I'd also like to emphasize what you're saying matters more with personal relationships.
Yeah. Yes.
And the little things which includes the way you speak. They're things you remember so much. But go on. So you would learn how to communicate?
Yeah, that communication and I think that so those hard skills. I think continuously learning. Something I hear a lot is people getting into their own circles a lot, right? Meaning you read the same news or you read the same articles, you follow the same people on social media. Expand your horizons. There's a lot of stuff out there to learn. And I once read...
be careful of receiving a feedback loop.
Yeah, I watched an interview with Bill Gates once, and they said, Bill, what are you reading right now?" He said, I'm reading a book about grass fertilizer." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I don't know anything about grass fertilizer, so I got to learn something."
Yeah.
Right? It's like that type of person is limitless in the things that
totally.
they will learn, and that's a really cool mentality to adopt.
Yeah. All right. Nice one. I don't have anything else specifically. Maybe a book/music recommendation for young people, and that'll cap it off.
Okay. In terms of book, it's a book called Spark. I should know the author. I don't know the author. I recently read it, but it's more on the professional side. So it's like, how can you be a spark in your own office or in your own community, on your own team?
Oh, right on.
And just more about optimism and positivity, but also kind of inspiring others and being a leader.
Yeah. All right. Music? Are you really into music?
Yeah.
I've been trying to angle music
nice.
throughout.
Dude, so I've been on a huge Led Zeppelin kick, actually. Okay. I've been crushing a lot of classic rock.
Yeah.
On a lot of my runs. So yeah, I'm into Zeppelin and Pink Floyd right now. Yeah.
Cool. I really think that music for especially a young person, but especially when you're in an ambiguous state of mind, if the right tune comes along, it can actually focus you like nothing else. Totally. Really like nothing else.
Yeah.
So Led Zeppelin, cool.
Yeah.
Can't recall anything that was instrumental to.
Well, no.
What was your soundtrack of India, for example? Apart from the local music, whatever you were playing on your iPod.
Yeah, for sure. So I have two things. Dave Matthews. I don't know if you know Dave.
I've definitely heard of it. Is that the Little River Band?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Dave Matthews Band, kind of a jam band, a bit like folk indie from in jazz. They do a whole bunch of stuff.
Sweet.
Kind of a jam band from the States. Dave's actually South African. So.
All right.
But anyway, Dave Matthews is awesome. Great live tracks and live music. What's funny in India is it's so interesting. You have those moments that playlists or songs that take you back to certain places. I had my Discover Weekly playlist on Spotify, and I ended up saving that playlist. I still listen to it today.
Sweet.
Because it just takes me back to that location. Yeah.
Amazing. Anything else you want to say?
No, thanks for having me. You've been an awesome host.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, man.
Sweet.
Okay. Very nervous to not